the International Federation of Rural Surgeons arranged a series of lectures describing what the rural surgeons in remote and rural areas can do with urology patients. And this series of take-home messages is a short summary of these lectures. And you can view the details in the appropriate websites where the entire lectures are broadcast. The background is that even in remote areas, about 6 or 7% of the patients that anyone sees has urology problems. And many of them can be properly diagnosed and treated with urodynamic studies. So we're going to describe what these studies are and how to interpret them. The bladder pressure studies is a common English name for cystometrogram or urodynamic studies. And these are primarily used to evaluate the lower urinary tract symptoms. And generally the commercial machines are sophisticated, expensive machines. And the only difference is that they have a rectal pressure transducer and a computer to calculate the pressures in the bladder. So what do we use it for? It's primarily to study the various symptoms of lower urinary tract symptoms. Commonly, these are called two groups of symptoms are there. One is the obstructive symptoms, one is the irritative symptoms. The obstructive symptoms are primarily hesitancy, poor stream, intermittency, and incomplete voiding. On the other hand, the irritative symptoms are nocturia, increased frequency, dysuria, and urgency. There may be other symptoms like hematuria or urinary tract infections. But then these are evaluated separately or differently from the traditional lower urinary tract symptoms, for which we use the urodynamic studies or bladder pressure studies. What are the indications for CMG or bladder pressure studies? Most of them are used for evaluation of the lower urinary tract symptoms that we described, which could be either both irritative or obstructive. And then most important use is the giving objectivity to the evaluation of bladder outflow obstruction. And the commonest we are talking about is the obstruction due to benign prostatic hyperplasia. And the third indication, broad indications for evaluating neurovesical dysfunction. And how do you do this low-cost urodynamic study? In most of the patients, especially in rural areas, we prefer to start with the prophylactic antibiotics. These are given about half an hour to 1 hour prior to the procedure. Then the patient's cleaned and raped as though they're going to have any regular major surgery. This is important because this is, even though it's minimally invasive, it's an invasive procedure. The two infant feeding tubes, one with 5 French and one 8 French, and plenty of xylocaine jelly is used for lubricating it, and betadine, which is for sterilizing the area. All these are kept ready before we start. For use as a manometer, an IV tubing is used, and as shown in the picture here, measurements is done in centimeters of water, and the level in the IV tubing is observed. And because you need to start at 0, the level of 0 is generally taken as the level of the pubic symphysis. Before starting the procedure, the patient empties the bladder. Then, of course, as I said, you need to clean and drape as per regular surgeries. Then, with a lot of lubrication, the infant feeding tubes are passed. it's generally good to pass both of them together. And one other thing we need to realize is that it goes in easily initially, but then at the level of the sphincter, there may be resistance because that's where the patients can voluntarily contract the muscles. Then you need to wait, applying gentle pressure. So when the patient relaxes the sphincter, then the tube goes in. And then because there is a jelly, the movement of the water level may not be easy. It might take a little time for the jelly to dissolve and then start moving. So before starting the measurements, you need to make sure the patient coughs and the level is seen moving up and down. Okay. And then we have, as shown in the picture here, you need to start recording the pressures every 50 ml as the bladder fills. And in addition to recording the pressure which is seen, you also need to record or note the sensations. The first sensation, the voiding sensation, then when they have the urgency to pass urine. And in between, are there any unstable or uninhibited contractions? And then once they can't hold anymore, then you ask the patient to void. And while voiding, it is good to note the maximum voiding pressure. And then after they finish the voiding, to measure the post-void residue. And this is how a normal tracing would look like. See, normally, till bladder has about 100 to 150 ml of urine, there's no sensation of any fullness or feeling of urine in the bladder. And then after that, there's hardly any change in pressure till the capacity about 350 or 400 ml is reached. So at resting, you might have any pressure which is up to 10 centimeters of water. And this remains almost like a flat curve till it reaches about 350 or 400 ml. And then that is the time then the patient has the desire to void. And in between, normally there are no unstable contractions or no bladder contractions. And how to differentiate this is that when if the contraction is due to unstable detrusor contractions, it goes up, stays higher for a long time, and then slowly starts coming down. On the other hand, if the patient coughs or for any other reason increases the intra-abdominal pressure, it will be a sharp rise and sharp descent. This should be ignored. And then when they're passing, it is like a bell-shaped curve. And the maximum voiding pressure is about 60 centimeters in men and about 40 in women. The post-void residue is about, or usually should be less than 30 ml. And now, what are the causes of high voiding pressure? The most common cause is prostatic hypertrophy. Here, the pressures can often be more than 90 centimeters of water. And in women, any pressures more than 50 is considered significant. In women, previous surgery, prolapse, and then sometimes urethral stenosis, they can cause this sort of high pressures in women. And then the sensations. We said the normal sensation of feeling that something is there in the bladder occurs around 100 to 150 ml. Then the normal desire to pass urine, and then urgency. But then in conditions like diabetes, they have either absent or poor sensations. And that is the reason they can have a very large capacity. They can hold up to 1 liter or 1.5 liters of urine without realizing it. They might just have some fullness or discomfort in the lower abdomen rather than the regular symptoms or regular sensations. And spinal cord injuries, pelvic surgeries, or fractures, herniated disc, these are some of the causes which cause the neurovesical dysfunction. And then another important thing to note is the compliance. Normally, as we said earlier, the muscle fibers are arranged in such a way that when the bladder capacity increases from about 150 ml to 350 ml or 400 ml, there's hardly any rise in the bladder pressure. which is unlike a balloon, where with the increase in volume, the pressure increases. This is because the way these muscles are arranged, they are controlled. But then if the muscles become thick, as it happens with cystitis or tuberculosis or many of the autoimmune diseases, this elasticity is lost. So instead of the curve being straight like this, it'll keep going up almost like a balloon. So neurovesical dysfunction is another cause where this compliance is poor. Then, as we mentioned earlier, we have what is called unstable contractions. These are contractions of bladder muscle, which occurs when they're not supposed to occur. So normally the bladder muscles are supposed to contract only when you want to pass urine. The sphincters are relaxed and the urine has to flow out, and that is the time bladder muscles contract. But in neurological problems, what happens is that the muscle contracts when the sphincter is closed. So the pressures inside the bladder goes up. And this can also impair the valve mechanism which is there preventing reflux of urine into the kidneys. And then what about post-void residue? Normally we said up to 30 ml is the acceptable limit. But then when it's more than 30 ml, it is significant. So this also happens because if there is a bladder outflow obstruction, the bladder muscle has to work much harder to pump out all the urine. And when the muscles get tired, they're not able to do so completely. So there is leftover urine. And then in many of the neurological conditions, again, they have weakness of the muscles, and due to a variety of causes, they can also have a high post-void residue. And how does this CMG or low-cost cystometrogram help us? Because it sort of helps us to decide how to treat these patients. For example, if the bladder pressure or maximum voiding pressure between 60 to 90 ml, they can be actually treated by the medications. We can use alpha blockers like tamsulosin, or which decreases the tension in the prostate, or drugs like finasteride or dutasteride, which decrease the volume of the prostate. Then we can use anticholinergics like oxybutynin or tolterodine if there are unstable contractions. And then if there is a significant post-void residue, again, if you know what the cause of it, we can work out how to treat it. If there is significant obstruction, then you can use alpha blockers. And if there is decreased sensations or neurological problems, you can practice what is called double voiding. And sometimes even simple things like alkalinizing the urine can help. And there are also several newer modes of treatment like biofeedback, sacral nerve stimulation, gene therapy, and so on. So these are many ways of looking at how to do urodynamic studies or bladder pressure studies and intelligently treat. You can have a full look at the complete discussion in the lecture, which is given by the help of International Federation of Rural Surgeons. This is just a summary of what that lecture describes. Thank you for watching.